All right, we're going to get started with our next panel, Building Sustainable Organizations. All these people on our panel here have some great experience in doing that. Lisa Chambers is our moderator. She's with TechCore, and she has more than 15 years experience developing and implementing CS and IT informal education programs for K through 12 kids. Followed by Antonio Tijerino. He's with Hispanic Heritage Foundation, and he's been there quite a while. He's the CEO and president. Many years.
He's old.
No, he's not old, but he knows what he's doing. So listen to this guy. We also have Cindy Johansson. She's with Edutopia. She's been there for 10 years, and prior to that, she was with a small organization called PBS.org, and yeah. So she has lots of great experience as well. We also have Maurya Couvares. She's with ScriptEd, and she's a co-founder and executive director, and she's been doing this for about 5 years, helping lots of kids in the New York City area. And then at the end, we have Karen Jung. She's with Nextech. She's the president of Nextech, and she connects the dots and people to fulfill Nextech's vision, also working with K through 12. So here we go.
Thanks, Lauren. Thank you, everybody, for jumping into our session. So we want to do a quick poll of kind of who's in the room so we can make sure that we kind of speak to what the needs are. So if you are in the education space, and I know some of you raised your hands multiple times. So let's say K-12 education. Oh, okay. Higher ed? Nonprofit? Industry? Oh, we can't ask anybody for money in here, but we'll find them later.
She set the whole thing up just to see who she could buy.
That's right. Mic drop. No. Okay. Good. We got a good group in here. So we're going to start off just by asking the panelists to share a little bit about their organizations and work, and then we're just to give you kind of the context of who they are, how large they are, the scope, and so I think that'll give you some grounding when we think about sustainability and how it might be applicable to the organizations and the work that you're doing. So, Antonio, you want to start us off?
Sure. So we are an organization that is, I guess, between about $3.5 to $4 million organization. We work with mostly corporate partners, although foundation partners that usually are attached to a corporate side. Don't do much with the public sector, even though a couple we do in terms of the Army and the Marines. Is this the kind of information you want, or just like our mission or something?
Tell us about the foundation.
And the actual, I don't know, I just thought it would be context of what we're talking about. In terms of the organization, what we try to be is very nimble and malleable and go into different areas that we see are gaps that need to be filled that we didn't feel were being filled in terms of the Latino space. So it could be anything in terms of business, entrepreneurship, the tech side of things, but also media and entertainment and a lot of other areas. We focus in 3 specific spaces, 2 of which I almost feel should be combined. But one is education, and then workforce development, which I think at some point education is workforce development. Also in promoting our culture through public awareness campaigns, and everything kind of fits into those slots, but it's very broad. And we try to be very clever about what we're doing in terms of working backwards from what the need is, from a value proposition that we offer as Latinos. I think that we have been devalued recently, and it's really important that we present that value proposition in terms of what we offer, not just our own communities, but the country. And the numbers are just numbers if you're not presenting that value and those opportunities and those possibilities.
Thank you. So, Cindy, tell us about your organization.
Hi, so I'm Cindy Johansson. I work with the George Lucas Educational Foundation. I assume you've heard of George Lucas. He started our foundation a little over 25 years ago. We're an operating foundation, not a grant-making one. We have 2 divisions, and I run the division that produces a resource called Edutopia. We also have a division that is focused on building the evidence base around project-based learning in K-12 classrooms. Edutopia is really a resource on the internet, a website, very much of a social media presence to inspire and inform people about what works in K-12 education. We are trying to address the problem that most people, teachers, parents, administrators, pretty much everyone, kids, know that education can be better, that schools can be better, but they're not sure what better looks like. And so we try through the power of documentary film, through very concise blogs, especially in this day and age of mobile, but to introduce people to successful models where kids are gaining academic skills, developing social emotional skills, excited about school. And our hope is that by showing these models, we'll encourage replication of successes.
Thank you. Maurya?
Sure. Hi, everyone. My name is Maurya. I'm the founder and executive director of Script Ed. We are a nonprofit that has an aim to help students from underserved communities access careers in technology. We do that by recruiting volunteers from the tech industry to go into our partner high schools and teach a foundational class in web development and computer science. Those volunteers are supported by folks on our staff who are former teachers who have experience in training educators. After students complete our first year class, they have the opportunity to take an advanced course at one of our corporate partners' offices, places like Google and Etsy, and BarkBox. And then after students complete 2 years in our program, they can take a paid internship at a tech company. We also are now rolling out an alumni program. We work in the high school age range, and so like I said, we want our students to access careers in tech, so our alumni program is that last bridge. We're helping them with selecting their college courses, finding internships in college, that type of thing. We've been around for 5 years, 4 years with full-time staff. When I started, I ran the organization on $15,000 the first year. We're now up to a $3 million organization. I have 18 employees. We're going to have 24 next year. We're in 35 schools in New York City, and we're in 3 schools in the Bay Area. We're going to be in 11 in the Bay Area next year. So we've grown really quickly, and sustainability is definitely something I think about every single day, because in order to kind of keep us going, we have to be smart about the way we sustain ourselves.
Karen Jung, president of Nextech, and we too are a young organization, just hit our 2nd year anniversary in April. We're a nonprofit focused on increasing the number of high school graduates that pursue a path in technology. We do this through really 2 core efforts. One is we are a regional partner of Code.org. We were actually the 2nd partnership they established. And so we provide the professional development activities to teachers throughout the state of Indiana. And that's our core business, if you will. We then also offer a number of bridge programs for high school students, not all that dissimilar to the programs that Script Ed offers. So we provide accelerated boot camps in front-end web development. We offer deep connections to industry, workshops, and design thinking, with the ultimate goal of placing these students into internships as well. We believe that once you get a student just kind of hooked into or connected into that tech ecosystem, it's a no-brainer what path they'll pursue. And so that's a big focus for us.
Thanks, Karen. So when you think about sustainability as a nonprofit organization, there's a lot of different things, and you all may have different ideas about what that means. But we've asked the folks, we're going to ask kind of the 2 groups to share a little bit. So we have some younger organizations, and then we have some organizations, Edutopia and Hispanic Heritage Foundation, that have been around for more than 10 years. And so sustainability can mean different things. So I'm going to ask the 2 younger organizations, when you think about sustainability, what does that mean for you all internally?
For us, maybe it's a matter of self-preservation because we're so young to how we define sustainability. It's what do we have to do to make sure that we're still around in 3 years, 5 years, 10 years? It's not as much a pure revenue stream conversation for us. So it is, what are the right things that we have to do to ensure that we continue to exist? And for us, that really comes down to focusing on 4 key areas for us. And the first is really what the subject of this session is being mission driven. Is we have to be very true to who we are and what is our mission, and be able to clearly articulate that to the marketplace, So that is, for us, that's really the first lever in sustainability. The second then is being able to clearly articulate what are the strategies that we are going to implement to achieve that mission, and being comfortable with saying no to other strategies or other programs. One of the, I think, dangers, if you will, of being a new organization is you often get asked to do every sort of thing possible that is tangential or relevant to what you do. And I had to learn how to get comfortable with saying no. You're not going to last if you keep saying yes to everything. So that's a big focus for us. Another is just operational efficiency. We're a staff of 3 full-time and 2 part-time, operating on $1 million budget. So we are very focused on operational efficiency. So you can get sustainability by bringing more in or taking less out. So we focus right now a lot on spending less until we get that revenue stream in. And then the other is going after smart dollars, or really going after investments that make sense. There are a number of grant opportunities or partnerships that come across our desk that we don't pursue. And we always say as a team, let's just keep doing the right things and the money will come. So really, just to kind of summarize this, if we focus on what one of our core values we call doing good great, if we just do things the right way with the right business mentality, we will be sustainable, and everything will ultimately take care of itself. And again, that might be a naive because we're into this for 2 years, but so far it's worked for us.
Thanks, Karen. Maurya?
Sure. I echo a lot of what you just said. So I think having a really strong theory of change and mission is really important. To your point about saying no, there are a lot of opportunities in the computer science education field right now. We get approached all the time to do a zillion different things, and if I look at a funding opportunity, a program opportunity, and I can't look at it and say, is this going to help our students get a career in tech, then it's a no-go. So really having a very strong mission statement of what we want to achieve and a theory of change of how we want to achieve it really helps us stay very focused on what opportunities we're taking, what opportunities we're not taking. Nonprofit life is like a life of high burnout. It's like, fundraising is really hard. We require a lot of our staff. So I also really try to practice what I preach in terms of work-life balance. We have a surprisingly high retention rate on our staff, even though we've only been around for 5 years. So, as long as we've been around, we've been able to retain our employees really well. So if an employee works on the weekend, I say you need to take a day off during the week, and I really make sure that they take that day off because I think it's just so important to maintain that balance, and the longer we can retain our employees, the more successful we'll be as an organization. From a funding perspective, we also kind of similarly, we will not go after a funding opportunity if we don't think it's going to be a recurring funding opportunity. So if somebody says, we'll give you $100,000 to help you start this new program, there needs to be a conversation that happens around, okay, are you just funding this because it's new, or are you going to continue funding us for the same work over time? And that's a lesson that I've learned over the last few years. So really looking at sustainable revenue sources. And diverse revenue sources. So place like not only going to foundations, but we charge schools for our program. We charge our internship companies to place our interns at companies, and trying to look at all different types of places for funding. I'll stop there.
So ditto with all that's been said. I think just to add, when I think of sustainability, in our strategic planning processes, sometimes we've looked at what we call the 4 R's. Reach, because we don't want to be a best kept secret, and we want to reach the right audiences as they evolve in their devices. Relationships, revenue. Wait, what's the 4th R? Relevance. Reach, relevance, revenue, and I am now forgetting my 4th R. Thank you. And so we're constantly measuring what audience we're reaching. Is it the right audience? Are they finding our resources of value? Keeping our finger on that pulse. And throughout my career, I was at PBS in the early days. I was joking that my claim to fame was hand-coding the first webpage for pbs.org, which no longer exists. They were removed soon after we started to attract an audience. But throughout that was a large organization, a very bureaucratic organization. I'm now at a pretty small organization. We're very, even though we're 26 years old, we're kind of like an entrepreneurial startup. And throughout those different experiences, keeping our finger on the pulse of, the data of, are we reaching the right people, and are we aligned with our mission and the focus and our purpose of what we're here to do. On the revenue side, I'm currently in a position with an annual donation from George Lucas that allows us to operate. It's $5 million a year, which allows us to do a lot of great work, but we're constantly having to focus on, are we investing in the right things for the greatest impact? And we do receive other grants at times, and I agree that it's, for us, it's been a minimum of $250,000, because working with an external partner and ensuring, even when you're focused on your mission, that the communications is there, there's a lot of work. And so the same work that would go into a $50,000 grant would go into $250,000 or more. So.
I wish I could say ditto like everyone else said, because when I first started doing this 16 years ago, and I came from the corporate side, they said I was scattered all over the place, and they're right, except I recently gotten some big award, and they introduced me as being nimble and agile. So scattered and all over the place turned into nimble and agile when you've had some success. That success has come because on a sustainable side, and this is contrary to what I should be doing, by the way, so all of you are right. I am not. But to be sustainable, we've had to be really bold. We've had to create programs with no funding and just go for the impact, and at some point have something that we can then grow and sell. That's created the sustainability for us. Every time we take chances and someone says that's outside of what you're supposed to be doing, it would lead us in some very interesting places that then became very fundable and became new tent poles that lift us. And I think part of that is because we've been around for a very long time, but only reason we've been around is because I've been able to do this. The other part is just grit. You should not be in this job if you're not willing to sacrifice it, not just your time, not just your family in some ways, but to be able to put on the line your reputation, to be able to put on the line the relationships for the good of your mission and your community. And that's why I feel very privileged to be here on a panel with all of you. But if you don't have that in you, you're in the wrong business, because we've had a lot of tough times over the years. I can remember 2007 or 8 when the crash, when everybody did. We had a whole group of sponsors that just never paid us, and I had a monstrous hole in my budget that I had to make up in summer, as of summer. And some of these companies, Lehman Brothers and Wachovia and a lot of others, GM, were bankrupt, and they weren't going to, be able to follow through. So you have to continually adjust. You have to have grit. You have to be willing to just do it alone for a while until you can build back up. And at that time, it pretty much was just a couple of us, and now we've got a staff that's 20 people in offices in LA that have more people than our headquarters in DC. But you got to get through it. It's almost like a marriage. You just got to get through those tough times, and you build that rhythm, and you build that relationship that is that's consistently focused on the bigger picture. So that's how we've been able to do it. On the revenue side, again, it's just being creative. I wouldn't turn down $100,000, but I understand why you would, because you're very focused and very disciplined about your mission, and you should be. Our mission is very broad, and that has allowed us to go into a lot of different areas that probably aren't different areas that all of you are in, but that's worked for us. But you have to have that grit along with that ability or that willingness to be malleable. So it's a constant evolution of what your organization does. And although being disciplined is great, and I wish I was more of that, but the needs of our community shift. And so we have to shift in how we fill those needs. When I first took over, it was very different. The technology space wasn't where the great need was in terms of matching where 500,000 jobs are open right now to where our community can have opportunities and, in addition to that, present that value proposition. There's no better way than to fill those jobs that America needs to fill as a community, and preparing them for that. And what do you do in education? Well, when you find out 9 out of 10 schools don't teach computer coding, so we created the Code as a Second Language program, CSL. And now those went from, in Boyle Heights, that guy right there in his hometown, and he's the one who spearheaded it, it went from $0 and just volunteers to now being in over 25 regions and funded by some really big companies. But you have to be able to take those chances.
Yeah, I think you're spot on. And I think evolution, I mean, TechCore has been around since 1995. We look totally different. While our mission has stayed the same, our work has changed. And our work has changed because the communities that we work with have changed. And so you do have to have that flexibility. You have to, I think it is important to know when to say no. But I think that being able to be nimble and flexible is something that we just have to be. And so one of the things when we were chatting earlier, we were talking about that, we're in this rapidly changing, kind of environment and space. And so a lot of times nonprofits aren't part of that conversation, but that certainly has an impact on us. So when you think about the changes and how fast they're coming, what are you doing internally to make sure that you're staying relevant and staying in front of things? And I'll throw this out to anybody on the panel that wants to go. Karen?
I think a big part for us is, especially the programs for our summer high school students, is we're market driven, and for us that market is the workforce. So we have an industry advisory board that we engage on a regular basis, and to remind us what are the specific skills that these students need to have, both from a workplace readiness, 21st century, but specific technical skills. And we respond to that. So today it's front-end web development. Tomorrow it could be implementing Salesforce. Next week it could be mobile app development. Hopefully it's not next week. We can't adjust that quickly. But it's a matter of continually asking, if I'm producing an output or a product, which is a student, what the next piece in the food chain, what is it they need from that student? And we adjust that way. So it just reminding us to always be market-driven and responsive to the industry.
Yeah, we do. We're similar. So we revise our curriculum every summer. Like I mentioned, all of our classes are taught by volunteers with the support of our staff. So, and all of our volunteers work at tech companies. So we ask them, what would you want a beginning level intern to know in their first job? And then we build our curriculum around that. In terms of staying nimble in other ways that or like, how do you kind of participate in this ecosystem beyond the actual content of our program? I think we're constantly like trying to learn new ways to fundraise, and I think that's probably a place we still have a lot of learning to do. We're always adapting, or we've been constantly adapting and evolving our internal systems. Like when we started, we used Gmail to communicate as a team. Now we use Slack. And just like always looking to ways that we can be more efficient as an organization as technology changes and operations get more efficient.
We're about to begin a strategic planning process. The last strategic plan we created was 2 years, because we really felt like with the change that's occurring, to even attempt to look 3 years out. I am going to try for a 3-year plan, but our goal is always to have these it's very nimble plans and a lot of flexibility built in. We manage on our annual. Each year with our operating plan, we have quarterly, check in on a quarterly basis on our progress, and that also gives our senior staff an opportunity to make decisions, because we're confronted, as an example, with Facebook's algorithm. Facebook is a primary platform for us to reach our audience, and similar to many organizations, it has been a wild and crazy ride over the last 2 years as they change their algorithm, and we're not reaching the audience in the way we need to. And that's the kind of shift that 2 years ago, when we created our strategic plan, we were not prepared for. And I feel like the pace just continues to get even greater, and which is amazing to me, because I feel like every time I say that, I think it can't get any crazier. And I do think the key is about efficiencies with the team, so there isn't the burnout. Slack's been great for us to get out of just the overload you used to feel with email. It's culturally a shift, but it's a very powerful shift, I think, for our team with collaboration and just trying to be smart about modernizing systems. What we were doing 5 years ago to produce digital content is very, very different now, because we have to just be smarter about how we can be lean, mean, and do this efficiently than hand coding, as an example.
I'm not a big believer in strategic plans. I've worked at enough companies. It's almost like a haircut, where the new person doing the strategic plans is like, who cut your hair last time? And it's always bad to the new person that's cutting your hair. And I also think of when Mike Tyson once said, when people were planning on beating him, he said, everybody's got a plan until you punch them in the face. And I think that happens a lot with nonprofits. So what I try to do is, I have a very involved chair who is from our network. He grew up in our system. He gives me a lot of direction, and he is a lot smarter than me. That's a really big thing, is to get a chair that's smarter than you are. And so the other thing is, I have a great staff, including Alberto here, who give me guidance in terms of where we should go. And they also know more than I do, especially in the tech space. I may conceptually have ideas, but they're the ones who really drive how the program should work, how my concept can come to fruition and be sustainable, and also when they have ideas, we'll work through the same process in terms of the programs we do. The other is our network. We have a network of 150,000 vetted 15 to 35-year-old Latinos that we've built over the years, and it's been remarkable to get their guidance in terms of what to do. They actually move us in a lot of directions that there's no way I would have taken us in. And so we listen to them. And the last one is our sponsors, that we listen to our partners in terms of what their guidance is in terms of going in a particular direction. So, for instance, we had a partner call us and say, I want to be able to create digital marketing fellowship in terms of teaching digital marketing to students that then can turn around and can have a digital marketing strategy for small businesses, Latino small businesses, and kind of create this ecosystem. It was totally her idea. She's with Google, and it was a fantastic program that we're executing over the summer. We've filled in some of the cracks and talked about how we can actually execute it. That was her concept, and we added some elements to it. But again, she's the head of multicultural marketing for Google for a reason, and it was a brilliant plan, and we executed it. So for me, it's always been taking direction from my constituents, and that has worked very well for us because they haven't led me in the wrong direction yet.
I think he was putting you on notice. So we're here to be supportive of you all, and so we want to turn it over and allow you all to ask questions. Lauren is going to run the mic for us. We are going to ask you, if you don't mind, when you ask your question, if you can introduce yourself, so your name and your organization, and pick it up from there. So does anybody have a question?
I'm Bob Pulaski, and I'm Interim Executive Director of the North Dakota STEM Network. Interim shows that it is, temporal. And that's one of the issues is, as we've talked to people, they say, yes, we're all about funding those programs that reach students, but they don't understand that it takes at least a few people to coordinate and organize full-time, a couple of full-time, half-time. How do you make that first initial argument? That seems to be the hump that we're trying to get over.
Is there somebody specifically wants to take that?
Yeah, I mean, for us, our first funding, I think it's like once you get the first, it seemed, at least for us, that things started to kind of happen after that. Nobody ever wants to be the first to fund something. The first person for us is actually an individual that was a tech leader, and so gave us a lot of credibility, and then I could go shop that out. So that was our path. We also got a major foundation kind of early on, and that helped. So it's really, I remember at the very beginning of Scripted, I probably talked to 100 people before I got one person to commit. So a lot of it is just hustle, and going person to person and trying to sell them on the idea until you find that one person. And then once you've got that one person or one organization, you can say, this person's in or this organization's in. They've vetted me. They vetted the idea. So I wish there was like a fast and easy answer. I can just say, have your pitch really solid and hustle.
What she said. I mean, it's literally, we had the good fortune, if you will, where when we launched Nextech a few years ago, it was with a strong chair who had great success in the tech sector. Didn't necessarily come with a lot of money, but came with a lot of strong brand. And we were fortunate enough as well within the first 6 months of existence to receive almost a $300,000 grant that to this day I still don't know why they invested in us, to be quite honest. We had no proof record whatsoever. But so I think and that was actually from the Commission for Higher Education, which I'm so new to all this space still, not knowing where the funds are. So that might be some advice, is that, we often look, there are dollars hidden, when you look at government dollars, there are dollars hidden throughout every state budget. I know it's not just in Indiana, so I think being able to look, whether it's through workforce development or, post-secondary or even secondary education, I think is a key part of that, and so creatively looking for that. And we also, looking for other funders. What are like-minded organizations in our area, or maybe tangential again, and who's invested in them, and getting that pitch ready, and then going after them as well. So you know that they've had a proven track record for making that investment. And then you really do just need that first one, because it is, once somebody's willing to make that big bet, it's amazing how many other people fall into line.
Does anybody else want to add?
I'll weigh in really quickly just from starting programs. Execute the concept, take a lot of pictures, build a case study, sell that. And it's kind of what you were saying. And you really, that's the only way to do it. Call it a pilot. They'll fund a pilot.
Yeah, I'll just jump in really quickly. I ran the program for a year before I had any major commitment of funding. So pilots are definitely important.
Do we have any other questions?
Hi, Sarah Dunton from ESEP. First, thank you, because I think that you all sort of shared stories of suffering, but you do amazing work. I was in nonprofit for 13 years, so I totally get where you're coming from, right? That hustle and all of it that comes together to do amazing things. My question is about Slack, of all the things that you talked about. I don't get it, right? I don't get how. So I work with 17 states, 3 to 5 leaders in all the states, and I'm trying to find ways to streamline communication, get communication back. Email is killing all of us, but how, what is the best way to communicate messages and manage everything that's coming at you, right? All of the grants, all of the people, all of the parents that you're connecting with, it's all coming at us. So how is Slack the answer, or what is the other answer? I'm curious.
I think that's a great, right? Because one of the things I think with a lot of nonprofits is limited capacity, but still a lot of work to be done. So Slack is one of the tools, but I'm sure some of the other organizations can also speak to. But if you want, Maurya, you want to start with Slack?
Sure. I mean, so I actually wasn't bought into Slack either when ScriptEd started, and I knew it was a thing that a lot of our volunteers used, and I still didn't implement it. And then we hired a new wave of program managers, and they were younger than me, all in their early 20s, and they just started using it on their own. And then I was forced to use it too. I think by having them kind of start it and pull me in, that's how it worked for us. It's kind of, I know before when people would describe Slack to me, I just would never get it. I can try to describe it to you now. So basically it's like a platform where you have different channels, and there are people that kind of subscribe to these different channels. So like we have a general channel, we have like our internships channel, we have a fundraising channel, and you can just kind of have a conversation in these different channels. And you can hashtag things and you can search for things, and it's just an easier way to communicate that's not like an email coming into your inbox every time. Beyond Slack, I think one of the things that we're really lucky as a community of people working with tech, in the tech workforce and with community partners from the tech industry, we can get a lot of ideas around efficiencies there. So we've, we're partnered with Salesforce, and they've helped us build out our Salesforce, where we do a lot of work in Google Docs. We, we've changed it now, but it was like when a volunteer would apply, we'd like have an automated email sent back, and just like having our volunteers kind of look at our systems as well and say, how can you make this more efficient? So look to your tech industry partners to help you think of ideas around efficiencies.
I'm just going to add on the Slack, because it reminded me of when I started Twitter, which was initially, it was really like a year or two of like, how does this work? And then you had that moment where you were like, oh, it's actually really valuable in a different way than other media sources I use. For Slack, it's, I think it's been a mindset shift from the email days where you felt like, and we had real complaints internally, our staff were overwhelmed with email and people weren't responding to email, and it just was not productive. With Slack, you begin to realize not everyone needs to be involved in everything with the channels, and you may miss conversations, but you can catch up if you need to. But it's actually, it's freed a lot of staff to focus on the work at hand and have trust, because you can see things happening in other areas of the organization, but you don't feel like you need to be involved. But if you want to be involved, you can be. So it's very different than email, but it takes a while, and their recommendation is start with a few channels initially, so you can begin to hopefully have that moment like I had with Twitter, where it was like, aha.
Any other questions?
So Patricia Ordonez from the University of Puerto Rico, Rio Piedras. And I guess this goes to the gentleman from the Hispanic Heritage Foundation. In terms of, Puerto Rico is facing a deficit, there's just a financial crisis that's terrible. It's the most impossible situation to start a foundation. What advice would you give us? Because we have things in place, but going the next step where people want to give, but there's a crisis. There's definitely a crisis in the.
We actually do our Code as Second Language program in Puerto Rico, but the difference is we're not getting funding from Puerto Rico. We're getting it from over here. So have you thought of a strategy in terms of kind of a mainland strategy to support what's happening in Puerto Rico? I would imagine that would be one place I would start, is to look to because a lot of companies. Well, first of all, I need to know more about what you do in order to do that. But we can talk afterwards. But I know a lot of companies, in their minds, the easiest way to recruit Latino talent is to go to University of Puerto Rico. Every time I talk to HR people, they'll say, we work with HBCUs, we work with this, and we go to the University of Puerto Rico. So that's one leverage point, that the island is filled with Latinos, and that should be an opportunity. The other is, where's that investment? What companies are doing work down there? I know at one point, pharmas were all down there, and that's directly related in the STEM space. So I think it's looking to companies on the mainland that invest in that buildup, because as difficult as it is in Puerto Rico, believe me, I have a lot of Puerto Rican friends. They are one of the most resilient, optimistic, powerful people I've ever met. So how do you prepare for when that vitality is there, which is going to be in short order? and being able to define what that value is that you're providing for when that happens. And I think the talent part is a big part of it. But before you have the talent, you have to start developing that interest in particular fields like in tech and other areas. And we should definitely chat in terms of even just leveraging the programs we're already doing. Just put your name on it and then look for how you can present that and package that for your own purposes. But to give you good advice, I'd need to know more about what you do there and who you're targeting. But I think you should have a mainland strategy for Puerto Rico.
And I would just add, too, I think the funding piece, when TechCore started, we came on the .com, so it was, I remember when I first started, we didn't even have to ask for money. People were just giving it, right? And then the bubble burst. And a lot of the groups that were heavily focused on funding from just .coms or telecoms took a hard hit. So I would say always think about not just, those funders you think that are in your community or seem to automatically align with the work that you're doing, right? I mean, at conferences like this, we talk a lot about the big tech companies that are investing, but a lot of our funders aren't tech companies. The financial institution or small family foundations, the work that we do resonates with a lot of different audiences. And I think that we as organizations in this space have to think beyond just the tech community to fund it, because life ebbs and flows. And while the money's there, it's great. But when the money disappears, you want to make sure that you've got other funders around the table and other strategies that are going to keep you going.
Every company's a tech company now. If you make cars, you're a tech company. If you make microwaves, you're a tech company. If you're a bank and dealing with cyber issues, you're a tech company. But I also, just real quick to jump on that, look for companies that have a heavily focused marketing strategy on Puerto Ricans, even if they're Puerto Ricans in other parts of the United States. There's always that tie back to the beautiful island. So like Banco Popular, that is here or others, just speaking of banks, look to them to build out some sort of a connection back to the island, because their customers are heavily Puerto Rican or at the very least Caribbean, and just find those tie-ins and just get creative.
Thank you. I think we have another question up front.
Hi, I'm Diana De Los Santos. I work on the education team at Girls Who Code. I guess up to this point in my career, I've worked primarily embedded in actual K-12 institutions that are publicly funded, like public schools. It's been new to me working in a nonprofit space where finding funding and communicating about your results are a big part of what we have to do. And I feel like a tension that I live often is wanting to tell companies or tell other people about the nuance and the interesting things that we're doing, but them also having questions and needing us to report back about the results of our work as well. So I'm wondering if that's a tension that any of you all have faced and how you both, navigate that tension, but also communicate about your results in a way that feels true to your mission and what's important in the work that you do day to day.
I don't know if we look at it as a tension, but we try to honor both. And I've always said, too, depending on who I'm sitting across from, I can tell you whatever story you want to hear. They're all true. But if you're an individual, then I'm going to tell you the empathetic stories about a young man who thought he'd have to work at McDonald's until he went through our program. If you are a institutional funder, I'm going to bring out my theory of change, my logic model, with all of my outcomes and my evaluation. So you have to have all pieces of the story to be able to tell what that impact is. And it's a matter, I think, of knowing your audience and knowing which one of those stories you then present. I do think it is important to invest in the right technology up front to be able to track all of those, whether it's stories or whether it's data. So we are a Salesforce house as well, and being able to put that information in so that you can then consume it. Because the other thing that we get presented with, I think I figured out every way to answer a question a funder's going to ask us until they find one other nuance to ask it. So whether it's a slice of demographics or geographics or whatever. So I think if you can invest in storing in a good data warehouse and being able to then really report out on it, that will help a lot on the big funding side, what we call development, really.
Yep, I have similar response, and I was a public school teacher before eventually starting ScriptEd, and I see the reporting out on data as it can be burdensome, but over time it's actually helped us improve our program and really helped us to understand what impact we're having. So it's actually something that's really useful to us. I sometimes get questions from funders about data that we just don't have. We don't have the capacity to collect. And I'll say that. I'm like, that would be a really interesting piece of data, but we don't have the capacity to collect that data at this point. But maybe if you fund us, we could hire somebody to help us collect that data. So I think it's good for holding organizations accountable, but also be honest about what you can and can't do and what you've got capacity to do. And then maybe if you've got a funder that's really interested, they can help you get the resources you need.
Clearly define what those measurables are and manage those expectations. And I think that's what you were saying. It's really, really important to get on the same page with your funder in terms of what their expectations are, what their measurables are, and how they align with yours. That is absolutely critical because you will lose funders if you're not on the same page, and you will then be seen as not being successful. So for instance, when a lot of the coding programs introduce kids to coding or reach X amount of eyeballs, if they're looking at it as what's that continuum and how do you define how many actually went into the industry, then you're going to lose. If you're just doing a public awareness campaign, like Hour of Code and others, which are important, but define those measurables. Is it how many eyeballs were hit on that particular day, or is it being defined the measurables being defined in terms of how many actually get jobs? This happens a lot in the sourcing side, where they're expecting you to deliver talent, for instance. How do you define that? Is there a program that goes along with the talent delivery? And you have to invest in the program in order to then be able to deliver on this end of it. And you have to work through all of those things. And I do think I agree 100% with what Maurya was saying, because a lot of times you'll roll your eyes and say, oh, what do they want now? All of it makes you better, makes you sharper, whether it's something that you can comply with or not. It's something that will make you think about what your number one audience is, believe it or not, is going to be your funder. Otherwise, you can't help your other audience, which is the actual students that you're trying to help. So you better listen and hear what they are asking for in order to be more effective, because chances are another funder will ask you the same thing real quick. So I get a lot of guidance in terms of what those deliverables are, but you just need to manage the expectations. And even then, you can have a divergent idea in terms of what those expectations are with two people on the funding side. And that just happened to us recently, where one was like, yeah, we want to build a brand out with your community and all these other things, and the other one was just like, no, we just want how many people are working at our company. And it was very, very difficult to try to explain to them that one side didn't matter to one and the other side didn't matter to the other. So that would be what I would say.
So I think we might have time for one more question.
Yeah, we have plenty of time.
Okay.
Yep, 10 more minutes.
Okay. Four minutes.
Well, we're 4 minutes. Oh, sorry. 4 minutes between us and lunch. So yeah.
Yeah. So we could
That
let
thing
out
called lunch,
early
yeah.
and we could get in line first. I'm just saying. But if you have a question, we sit with us at lunch.
On a Friday when you're being let out of school and says, don't we have any homework?
Right.
I just want to add to the last question, the power of a story. We see it through the work that we do, and I think it's true with funders, with any audience, beyond the analytics and the data. The power of a hook of a story will make all the difference. So I encourage you. We're sitting here. I used to serve on the board of the Children's Creativity Museum across the street, and we used to have a mission moment at the start of every board meeting as a way to just bring in that story just for 5 minutes, but to talk about why you're here And even if it's about one person and the change you've made, it really helps to ground you in what you're doing.
I think that's powerful, and I think that's a great place to end. So I know you all have great stories to tell. I know the panelists will be more than happy to connect with you after, but can we just give them a quick round of applause?